Today we're taking a look at exterior walls and how their sheathing affects the overall strength of our project. So let's get in there and make it happen, Captain. We touched on this in one of our other videos, and we adjust our layouts of the floor and how our exterior walls are built so that on the exterior corners of two walls where they meet each other, the plywood can kind of hang past and latch onto the other wall. And after the fasteners are applied, they bond together and create that strength that we need to make these buildings last for a very long time. This is the bare bones first part of the structure, and you can see that we have the bottom plate kind of overhanging the edge of the floor here. We've done that so that we can build the entire wall in one piece, apply all the sheathing to the wall, and then as we stand it up, be able to slide it over, wrap around the corner of the wall, and attach it properly. All right, so if you take a look here, this is kind of what we were talking about, how I was seeing in the other video from that other YouTube channel. I know that he has just slipped in the jacks right here, but the header that I noticed was attached directly to the studs, but had no direct support underneath the header. These jacks need to be applied in this situation. If you could only imagine how much weight could be administered to this area, so to not have any direct support, I think is a big construction no-no. So in this case, being that the window is over 4 feet of a opening space, we're gonna apply double jacks. And you can see that these will go in and provide direct support underneath the header, ensuring that this thing is not gonna budge, dip, dodge, duck, or dive. As we're applying these jack supports to the window right here on this exterior wall, it's really good to make sure that these jacks are nailed to the king stud with 2 nails every 16 inches on center. We're gonna have 2 nails coming up from the bottom plate into the jack stud itself, and also the jack studs nailed to the king stud and to the other jack stud, ensuring that they're properly tied together all the way. Before we can even get to the sheathing of the exterior wall, we've got to make sure that all the parts are properly installed so that as this sheathing is applied, nothing is going to move or be out of place. You will play hell trying to get OSB plywood off of a wall if it's nailed with staples that we use, these narrow crown staples. So again, you have to make sure that everything is properly attached, fully fastened before you square the exterior wall and before you apply the exterior sheathing. Another thing we had to do is add blocks in here to connect an interior wall. This is shifted over a little bit, but this is actually the location of the wall right here. These blocks are going to allow us to fill the exterior of the wall with insulation while simultaneously connecting the interior wall to this exterior wall with sufficient points to nail that creates no buckling, shifting, shaking, or separation before the sheetrock is installed. One thing I gotta touch on is that the sheathing that they installed onto the wall, we gotta make sure that we nail that plywood around the perimeter every 3 to 4 inches on center. You don't want a big space in between the edges of that plywood. That's where a lot of the pressure and a lot of the expansion and contraction occurs at. So around the perimeter of the plywood, you gotta have that thing either nailed or stapled every 3 to 4 inches on center. Now in the middle, where those studs are, we can nail that at a spacing of about 5 to 8 inches apart. It's really not necessary to get that close. But after all of the sheathing is properly nailed, it's time to install the Tyvek or house wrap like we have here. There's a very, very small difference. This is kind of a burlap house wrap versus a Tyvek, just a more cost-effective option. You can get a roll of 100-foot burlap here in Virginia for about $89, where a roll of Tyvek waterproofing will cost you about $150. So you do that every 2 or 3 rolls of house, you can save, you know, about $150. And us that we build about 10 houses a year, that's $1,000 right there just by the house wrap. Very, very important to make sure that's stapled off all the way around. And we always leave a little bit of an extra on the ends of the wall. This will be folded back temporarily while the adjacent wall is built and installed, so that after it is stood up, we'll be able to wrap that around, overlap that existing connection by at least 6 to 8 inches, tape that seam, which will prevent any water intrusion. Very, very important part of the waterproofing process over windows and doors is I like to install my vinyl flashing underneath of the house wrap or the Tyvek. This allows it to be pulled down, and as the water or moisture hits the house, it will run over top of the flashing and the house wrap, and then out through the channels of the window, out and down, out of the house where we want it to go. This will keep that buildup from going in and around the jambs and the jack studs, which is what could really cause a lot of wear and tear on the window area or doors more specifically over a very short period of time. So just by having this vinyl installed underneath the house wrap, then you'll see we're gonna put some glue or caulking right here at the upper edge where the vinyl meets the sheathing, and pull that house wrap down and really smear that glue or caulking so it creates a waterproof surface over top of the structure. After that vinyl is installed, we'll pull that house wrap down and we'll tape this seam right here on a 45-degree angle. That'll again prevent any moisture from going back in and around, being able to get inside or behind the flashing we've installed. Now, as you can see here, we have our plywood that is hung over 4 inches. Now, we adjusted the layout of this wall to allow that plywood to do that. This allowed our overall dimension to the center of the first breaking stud to be around 44 inches. The plywood sheet being 48, that gives us our 4-inch overhang we have here over the wall. Now, as they stand this wall up, this plywood is going to be able to wrap right around this corner. And after we attach the interior stud directly to the corner, we'll come back outside and nail that plywood directly to this wall. They're adhering the 2 walls together and really providing for a strong, strong connection point. It will take a massive act of God to break these walls apart. Vámonos. 1, 2, 3. Está bueno. But now you can see, we have this wall attached. The plywood comes perfectly overlapping the corners. And as these 2 walls are nailed to the floor and nailed to each other, we'll finish that off by nailing it right here on the corner, finishing off that strong connection point. It's always nice to do 2 rows of nails up and down about 3 to 4 inches on center. And there we have it. Now, as you can see, we nailed 2 rows of staples, top to bottom, about 3 inches on center. This completes the secure connection from the front wall to the adjacent side wall. By that overlapping plywood, we have completed the exterior wall build process in the most efficient and strong fashion that we possibly can. One thing that's very important as you stand up the wall and begin to attach it to the subfloor and the other exterior wall, you have to make sure that the plates are really touching the other wall. If you have a gap, that completely changes the dimension of the walls and where they stand. Second thing you need to watch out for is, being that we pop those chalk lines around the perimeter of the home, the wall needs to be directly on that line to ensure a straight and complete install. We really want a perfectly straight structure for the subcontractor's side and sheetrock guys that work behind us. Now, after we get it straight on the line, You see that Antonio has installed these nails here directly beside the stud. These joists that are running below us are running in the same direction as this wall. So this wall is directly on top of the band board. So you can only attach to the very outside to create that contact directly to the joist. But what you can do by keeping it close to the studs is not have any nails in the middle of the cavity, which is where your HVAC, plumbing, and electrical contractor will be drilling to pass their cables, tubes, and pipes. Keep those nails nice and clean next to a stud, directly into a joist, so that way you allow the trades that work behind you to be able to drill their holes without tearing up their bits and blades. That'll do it for our exterior wall video, and we'd like to send a super thanks to all of the support, shares, and comments that we have received over the last couple of months while we've been shooting these carpentry videos. If you guys have anything you'd like to see, please let us know down in the comment section below. And until next time, you guys have a great day. I got a little splinter right there. That way you probably should use some gloves. That was a heck of a splinter.